So I'd like to now welcome Emma. Emma, who has a question related to, which leads nicely on to mass transit. So Emma, where are you?
Hi. What metrics have been used to assess the viability of the tram system as part of the mass transit scheme, and what's been taken into consideration when finalising which of the three options you'll choose?
Yeah, there's been a big consultation that over 4,000 people took part in, but we've also been having consultations and conversations with disability groups, with climate and environment groups, making sure that we engage absolutely everybody, and particularly when it comes to accessibility for this network. I have said we need to make sure that nothing has to be retrofit for those with a disability or access issues, that we have that absolute focus right at the beginning to make it as inclusive as possible. So I don't know if you've seen the consultation and if you contributed to it.
So for transparency, my business is on 2 of the 3 routes that the tram lines proposed to go through. Thank you.
That's really helpful to know that, thank you.
We weren't provided with any information directly as business owners, as private business owners and landowners. Before we found out in the TNA that our land was on the route after the consultation period finished, but we've spoken to somebody since. But I think from our point of view, we're wondering, there's an electric train line that goes from Leeds through Pudsey, there's a really good bus network. What makes it most viable to have a tram as well, when there's other areas within West Yorkshire Combined Authority that have far poorer routes that could be better served with money?
Lovely, thank you. That is a really good question. And I think making the decision to contact people on the route, there is a presumption of our choice of what route we would want. So I think there is when you're starting a consultation, I think we have to stay very hands-off, because this is about the public and consultees to have their say about where it, what's going to work for them. For me, bringing Leeds and Bradford together as the first route is pivotal to growth for West Yorkshire. Together, these 2 extraordinary, amazing cities, the size, when you put them together, of Estonia, are not connected, and people have to drive to Leeds and vice versa. The tram network will free up the fast rail. So we're going to have a through station in Bradford, which will mean that we could potentially get, and these are government numbers, the previous government numbers, a direct rail trip from Leeds to Bradford in 12 to 15 minutes. That's going to be a game changer for all the young people of Bradford, being able to access amazing jobs in Leeds and vice versa. And the tram is then the stopping, connecting opportunity. We are being left out of an amazing opportunity in the fact that we don't have this connection. Leeds is the only city of its size in Europe without a tram network. Even Nottingham has one. No disrespect to Nottingham, if anyone's from Nottingham. But this is our time, and it's about time we get that connection. And I meet so many young apprentices and workforce that are like, I just can't go for those jobs, it's just too far away. I've chosen this university because I can't get to that one, because the transport's too difficult. The tram isn't the only solution though. That's why bringing buses back into public control to feed the tram is also important, to have that integrated transport plan, including rail, including mass transit, including buses, including cycleways, is really going to be important. But I think if I could come to you, Simon, about the particular technicalities of the matrix.
Yeah, certainly. Oh, sorry, thank you.
And businesses maybe.
So there's a range of different factors that have driven our conclusion. It's partly to do with the economic growth and the shape of economic growth in West Yorkshire. It's partly to do with the connectivity challenges that we've got. So those corridors, those highway corridors between Bradford and Leeds are amongst the most congested corridors that we've got in West Yorkshire. So the public transport offer that's there at the moment is not sufficient to satisfy the movement that is taking place. And then really importantly, it's about the feedback that we've now had through the consultation, and there's a big body of work underway at the moment to make sure that we properly captured all of that information, and that we spend significant time in the early part of next year reporting back to elected members on what we've learned through the consultation. I am a little bit concerned if you didn't have the prior notice, because there was certainly a significant activity that was underway to notify residents and businesses along the potential routes. I'm pleased to hear that you're in the process now, but I will pick up with you at the end just to make sure that we've got all of the dialogue in place with you, because we do recognise that these are significant schemes. They bring enormous wider economic benefits, but they are big pieces of infrastructure in our neighbourhoods, and we know that we need to be able to design them right, and we need to stay in touch with you right through that. So I will pick up with you at the end to make sure.
Thank you, Simon, because we'll just make sure we can take this away. But just to reassure you that the ones that went out to consultation, before that, months and months beforehand, we had a whole raft of options that were then sifted through. Affordability was one of them, deliverability, will we be able to deliver it in this century? All of these other issues we've sifted down to a number of options that then the public can comment on. And also, for me, this is an extraordinary opportunity for our young people, because I also have responsibility for adult education, budget and skills. So I can start the pipeline of training for those young traffic planners or engineers to get these great jobs that are going to give them employment for a decade, if not longer. Because once we have the spine, Leeds to Bradford and south from Leeds down towards Dewsbury, then we're going to be building on that spine of other routes across West Yorkshire. So if any of your young people are into engineering, they will never have to leave West Yorkshire, because there's going to be loads of jobs for them. So don't go without speaking to Simon before you leave.
Thank you, Tracy. And thank you, Emma, for the question. So we're going to swiftly move on now away from transport onto inclusive economy, employment and skills. Now, Tom in the audience. Is Tom here? No? Okay. Look at me, I get to read the question. So Tom's question is, with funding disparities across the country, how are you going to ensure that all young people, regardless of their postcode, have the same access to quality education and opportunities? Very good question.
Gosh, it's so wide. I mean, we could spend the whole evening discussing that question, couldn't we? But just to roll that back a little bit, I really do believe, growing up in Batley in a council flat with my mum, dad and sister on free school meals, sitting here in front of you today was because of those opportunities that were given to me. And that is, opportunity to go. I was first in my family to go to university, free, libraries that were open, opportunities to do, to have a good education. As I say, go to university. I was on the dole as an actor, between acting jobs, being able to get going and to fulfil my potential. And my own kids were on free school meals, because being freelance is the original gig economy. And my partner was also freelance as well. So I really understand that talent is everywhere, but opportunity isn't. And it is one of my driving missions as a politician to make sure that wherever you live, whatever your parents do, whatever your background, you have the same opportunity as anybody else. And finally, and this is very personal to me, housing. We do not have enough warm, safe, sustainable, affordable homes in our region. Too many people are living in temporary accommodation. 1,500 households are living in bed and breakfasts and hotels. 50% of them have children. Children doing their homework on bathroom floors. Parents not getting a good night's sleep because they're sleeping in the same bed as their kids. How on earth are they going to fulfil their potential or get a job or get promoted? So I've focused really clearly and tried to set the tone that housing is going to be a priority for me. We've delivered on my pledge from the last time I was elected, 5,000 affordable homes. And in the last year alone, we've built more homes than since 1997. I am on a mission, and I'm really pleased to see that this government and the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, has also focused on housing as the way to help grow your economy. Because it can't be right that because you went to a nice school, you grew up in, no disrespect to anybody that lives in Ilkley, Ilkley's lovely, but you have those life chances as opposed to others, because it is absolutely criminal and it shames us all that a child born today in Batley will live a reduced life expectancy and good health as a child born today in Ilkley. We can't have that. We just can't, and that is my job as the mayor to even out the opportunity. If I may just finally say as well, there was a big report recently about women and health in the north. Women in the north are more likely to have caring responsibilities, live shorter lives, have more illnesses, be more likely to be a victim of domestic violence, have the least qualifications. And this is a staggering number. But if the women of the north were paid the same as other women in the rest of the country, they would be on 132 million more a week. Just let that land. And if we are going to do anything to level up our region, we also have to have a priority for women as well. So as the first ever female Metro Mayor in the country, I've also made that something that's really high up on my agenda. That's why the safety of women and girls is also important, because you can't have an inclusive economy if women feel unsafe about going about their business.
Thank you. Still on funding question. Catherine has a very important question for the region. Where's Catherine?
Thank you. This probably cross-cuts a number of the themes that we've touched on already, but how is West Yorkshire Combined Authority engaging with central government to ensure future funding is prioritised for West Yorkshire over and above that announced in the budget?
Thank you so much for that, Catherine, because what has been happening with mayoral combined authorities in the past is that the government would announce a fund for something, everybody would bid into it like a beauty contest, and some bids were successful and some bids weren't. So our success would mean somebody else's failure and vice versa. So since I became mayor, I've been making the case we cannot keep going back to government, like with a begging bowl, asking for crumbs off the table. We need to have the autonomy and the agency over our own lives and our own choices. So the single settlement that has been trialled in Greater Manchester and West Midlands, which is all of those funds rolled in together, but more importantly with the freedoms and flexibilities to do what you need to do in your region, I think that has been the game changer. So I'm really pleased that this government have heard that message, and it was going to be with the previous government 2028 that we got considered for the single settlement. Now it's 2026. So we are feeding in to the spending review what monies we need for our ambitions, these huge infrastructure projects. I mean, mass transit is a national infrastructure project delivered locally. It's £3 billion worth of infrastructure. So we are saying to government, come with us on this journey, and I really do see how the focus on growth from this government is going to really help us make that case, because you can't grow the economy in the country unless you grow the economy of the regions. I keep stopping because I've got a colleague at the front handing up a 1 minute sign, so if it looks like I've come to a very abrupt end, it's because she's glaring at me.
Well, the next question is actually, you can add to that using the answer from this one,
right?
Because it's a little bit similar. So thank you for your question firstly, Catherine.
Yeah, thank you.
So moving on to business, but it's also about procurement. Martine, where's Martine? Martine, could you kindly read your question, please?
Hello
Hi.
there. Speaking as a West Yorkshire SME in Bradford, with the increased spend hopefully going to be seen in public services, how can you ensure that the government organisations use local SMEs to procure and give us more opportunities, and also manage that spend more effectively than we've currently been seeing as well?
Thank you so much for that question. And what's your business?
So we're a local SME in Bradford, Baildon, doing IT and office supplies.
Okay, good stuff. So the majority of businesses in West Yorkshire are SMEs, so it's over 90%. I have the Mayor's Business Board. Mandy Ridyard is a Bradford businesswoman. She runs an aerospace company. She's the chair of that board. And we hear often from SMEs about how can we be part of the success story for West Yorkshire. Now, we know that as a region, we've got some amazing strengths: financial services, advanced manufacturing, we're the home of the NHS, but we're also incredible parts of the supply chain across the rest of the country. So if West Yorkshire closed down, the majority of manufacturing, particularly in the UK, would close down as well, because we are often pivotal to lots of businesses. One in particular in space, in the space sector, satellites. In Shipley, we make loads of grommets, I don't know what they're called, bits for satellites, that if you took out those bits, the satellites would fall out of the sky, because we are so much part of manufacturing, and also IT and digital is one of our great strengths. So when we are looking at our big infrastructure projects, when we're looking at bus franchising, we're looking at how can we make these contracts small enough for an SME to bid for. Because some of the contracts, the tens of billions, potentially, that they're really big. And what you don't want to do is squeeze out the lifeblood of your community, because you are the employers as well. So really important to make sure everything we do has an SME focus. Also, just to let you know as well that I've been made really aware that we have some amazing graduates from West Yorkshire, 7 universities, 7 FE colleges, and a lot of those graduates look to the sort of headline companies, the big companies, the Siemens or the Asdas or Morrisons to start their careers. But SMEs want graduates. So we've now just launched the Mayor's Graduate Programme, just telling you because you're an SME, the Mayor's Graduate Programme, where we will recruit the graduates, we will train them so they are ready to join your business and hit the ground running and deliver, and then we will support them throughout that programme with you in your business. So if you're looking for graduates, do reach out. But I don't know if Sarah, do you want to talk about procurement and SMEs?
Yes, I think
Sarah is my head of strategy.
So I think just on procurement, we know that there's been some recent legislation as well around making it much easier to kind of award contracts to businesses, and that means it will be much easier for us to kind of do the work that Tracy's talked about, which is around making our contracts much smaller, able for you to kind of access them. So that is a one way that I think over the coming months, years, we'll be able to kind of get much more into that space. I think there's also the work that we do around when we are letting our contracts is thinking about social value as well, and that is a really important part of the procurement process. It allows us to kind of get some added value on the contracts that we're kind of letting. So I think there have been some recent changes which I think will make it much easier for SMEs to kind of access, and there's some great opportunities, I think, as Tracy's mentioned, with some of the big work that we're taking place around mass transit, around kind of the bus franchising, that we're hoping we'll be able to kind of support our SMEs to kind of access that moving forward. So I think there's lots there to kind of keep an eye on over the coming months, really. So I think that procurement legislation has been really helpful in that space.
Thank you, and I'm really pleased to see the government understanding about late payments for SMEs. It is a shocker that you're having to wait so long to get your payments, so that's been, I think, a good news story. That said, I know that the budget has been tricky for SMEs, and I know that there's definitely challenges, but I'm hopeful for the future.
Thank you both. Thank you, Martin. I just want to quickly just add to that though, where can people find opportunities to apply for any tenders or any contracts that are available? Because a lot of SMEs that I know don't know that these opportunities are available. And sometimes as well, I know my company, when we've gone through a normal portal, they ask for a fee to receive tender documents, and some of us SMEs can't afford them. So where can people get this information from?
There is kind of a portal, I'm sure it doesn't charge a fee, it's called Your Tender, and everything that we're kind of advertising is placed on there. So it's a really good place for you to kind of have a look and check out what's coming forward, and I think that's a really valuable way of people kind of keeping an eye on what's happening. So I think that's, and if you want any further details, I can take details and pass that on later.
But there's also West Yorkshire Business, which is what I'm hoping we can be really accessible to business, because there's so many opportunities for schemes and programmes. One example is for support with your energy costs. If you are trying to green your processes, like get a new boiler or new lighting, we can match fund that. So I'm just saying, anybody that has a business here, Sharon from Yabba is really good at, sharing knowledge, but I want more businesses to come to us and say, what have you got for us? Because there's so much going on that we're trying to support business.
Thank you. So our next question is on international investment. Yasmin, where can we find Yasmin? There we are. You have a question.
This is my first step into local politics and
well, you're very
council.
welcome.
So I'd assume that kind of there'd be an ethical policy guiding councils' investments, and so I was very dismayed to find that millions, if not even perhaps billions of pounds, are invested in companies which in fact support Israel. So as we all know, Israel has been flouting international law for decades. So the kinds of concerns that people are raising here regarding transport or educational opportunities or women's rights, all of these have been totally under attack for decades. And we are seeing the result of the international community's indifference to the suffering of Palestinian people.
Manifesting. Ask your question.
Sorry. So my question directly is, within that context, will your policies regarding Israel change investment choices, for instance, given the recognition of criminality of Israel's leaders by the International Criminal Court? And I think today Amnesty International also published a 300-page report confirming this, the criminality.
Thank you. Well, as that's your first time, you did really well. So I don't think it'll be your last. Thank you very much for that question. And look, we have seen, it's been heartbreaking for everybody to see what we've seen. I am pleased that what we've seen from a Labour government, and they've said that if Netanyahu would be arrested, as a combined authority, we don't, my understanding is we don't procure anything from Israel. So, that's not necessarily an issue for us. But I would say that my job, I was a politician in the House of Parliament, so I would probably have more of a role in making my voice heard in that space. But my job is to really grow the economy for the people of West Yorkshire and put more money in their pockets. But just to that point, I'm also aware that we need to take leadership positions, and I was the first mayor in England to call for a ceasefire, and it feels like too long ago. And working with Fatima Khan-Shah, my inclusivity champion, Alison Lowe, my deputy mayor for policing and crime, my job is to try and ensure that what's happening across the world does not then cause harm in our communities, and that we can work on bringing people together at a time of great heartache in order to just try and support people through what is very difficult times. And, you know, people are very broken by what they see. So I'm hoping that that answered your question, but very happy to take that away after the session if you want to give me your email. And if I can, I'll give you a more detailed answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasmin, for that question. Still related to investment, Lisa. I believe Lisa would like to ask a question. Is Lisa in the audience?
Hi there. My question is about culture. So the years of culture across West Yorkshire leading up to Bradford being the City of Culture 2025 will undoubtedly strengthen the creative industries across our region. But what are your plans to help us maintain that momentum and ensure that we have continued investment in the growth and sustainability of our brilliant cultural sectors?
Well, this is, after transport, my favourite subject, so I could definitely talk about this all evening. As you know, you may know that I was an actor and a writer in the creative industries before I became a politician and now the mayor. I really get the fact that culture is a tool for regeneration, investment, growth in the economy, well-being, sense of place and belonging, skills opportunities, and to bring tourism. It is often disregarded by governments. I am pleased that this government see it as part of their industrial strategy. Since I became mayor, we've invested about 12 million in culture across the region. We've invested in Leeds 2023, Kirklees Year of Music, Wakefield Our Year, Bradford City of Culture, and I don't see any world where that investment is going to stop. But it's not just about investing in years of culture, it's also, as you say, that legacy and sustaining it. And part of the challenge is to sustain working class freelancers and to keep them in the sector. So that's why we've invested 2.3 million in a programme called You Can Make It Here, which is to support working class freelancers to get training and support, to connect with other freelancers, so they don't fall away from what they've been trained to do and the things that they want to do. It's why I started the Mayor's Screen Diversity Programme. Too often, working class kids, diverse kids, kids with a disability just don't get the training to get into TV. That's been hugely successful. We've opened it up to the Mayor's Script Diversity Programme, so we get those stories from our region. The Mayor's Young Poet Laureate with our Poet Laureate, Simon Armitage, was so successful, the Arts Council have rolled it out across the country. But this isn't enough. We have to sustain our place as a place of creativity. So I've been leading with Arts Council, Channel 4, BBC, the Royal Society of the Arts and others, to bring all the mayors of the North together with a One Creative North offer. So bringing that economy, economy of scale, that you do not have to invest in the South. We have to tilt this mad investment. 70% of all the investment in the creative industries goes to the South. We have to level it out. And I think the way we do it is by working collectively as mayors with our vision and our knowledge of our regions to get a fantastic offer. So Kim McGuinness in Newcastle, in the North East, has a film studio plan for Sunderland. I want her to be very successful and to get that away, because I've got some amazing training programs that will have a skilled workforce ready for that film studio. And one thing that I'm really pleased that we've been able to do is when a film company sets up a series, we've been running alongside it training. So AA Dan's new series set in Bradford, about a detective in Bradford, we've run a training program alongside of that. So young people were trained on the job and then will go on and stay in the sector. But it's also about making West Yorkshire a great place to live and work. So people in the sector don't feel that they have to move to London, that they can have an amazing creative life here. And that is my mission, to grow this sector, the creative industries, because it's already growing. If you want growth, if you want more money in people's pockets, if you want people to have that you know, the money that they can just go to the cinema on a Friday just because they fancy it, or they can have a holiday with their kids. To grow the economy, we invest in growing sectors. The creative industries is a growing sector. I'm determined to make West Yorkshire that creative crucible that is, you know, not going to end in 26. And finally, if I may, next year, in 26, it's the 200th year anniversary of the national parks. So we are thinking, and just test this with you now, we're thinking that 26 could be a greener West Yorkshire. So where we'd focused on culture, now we're focusing on pocket parks and green spaces and activities and art and sculpture in green spaces. So there's loads we could do, and I'm definitely up for it.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Lisa, for that question. I just want to add something to that, Tracy. I think everybody...
I'm losing my voice, so I'm sorry if I'm squeaking.
We're all very excited, I'm sure, about City of Culture 2025. And it's such a welcome from you, Tracy, that you've contributed 6 million to the pot. That's fantastic. I believe it's 6 million, I hope that's right. But how can we make sure, because it's all about legacy as well. You know, the question that Lisa asked was about what happens after 2025. So that money that you've given and all the money that's come in for City of Culture 2025, how can we make sure there's accountability and that money is well spent, which then has the lasting impact that it's meant to have? So how can you make sure that the 6 million you've given to the project, you know, is delivered, is spent well?
Well, any money that comes out of my office, because it's public money, has to go through a really rigorous assurance process. And creatives will tell you this is killing us because, you know, when you're building a bridge, it's very different assurance expectations to when you're putting on a play or doing something creative. So the outcomes are less tangible. However, an example of a brilliant outcome, that when we gave a small amount of money to Leeds 2023 for a project that Jude Kelly was curating, and her idea was, we are going to raise a barn in 24 hours with 300 women. So I said, it sounds really exciting. If anybody's seen the film Witness, in the middle of this film Witness, the Amish community raise a barn in 24 hours. And she said, we're going to use 300 women, 150 women who are inexperienced in construction, 150 experienced. In 24 hours, they raised a barn in the pouring Yorkshire rain. That barn then became a venue that young women curated as a performance space for 2 weeks. And then the inner city farm took the barn and then moved it to an inner city farm as an outdoor classroom. But we'd sort of understood the impact of that, of, you know, that cultural moment. It was part of UK Reef as well, which is a big developers conference, 13,000 delegates, all talking about building. Went to, you know, lots of people went to see this barn. But what the one thing that we couldn't quantify financially is when a young woman with a little boy came up to me after the launch and said, Tracy, I've never done construction before. I've left an abusive relationship. I've now finally found myself. And she was talking about signing up for the College of Building to be a plumber. You can't quantify that in an assurance process.
Yeah.
You can't. But I know, and those in the creative industries know, that you can weigh your beans, and you know how many beans you've got, how much they weigh. You cannot quantify the smell of those beans, the taste of those beans. And I think I understand the creative sector, and I know how hard it is to get through our hoops you have to jump through. But rest assured, every penny is accounted for, but the outcomes, I always believe, are greater than you expect.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to crime and safety now. Rachel, do we have Rachel? Is Rachel? No? Okay, lucky me, I get to read the question. So this is Rachel's question. As someone who regularly travels on public transport and walks around Bradford city centre, I and my teenage daughter have been subject to harassment. What improvements are you making to increase the presence of police on the streets to protect women?
Well, firstly, she and her daughter are on their own. 86% of women experience sexual harassment in the street in public. Now, when we use that statistic on a film that we've curated to encourage male behaviour change, called it's #JustDon't, that video with that statistic went online. It's gone viral. 4 million people have seen it. And underneath that film were loads of comments from women saying that number's not correct, 86% is not right, it's 100%. And I'm sure most of the women in this room have experienced that crap, and we're sick of it. I'm sick of it. I don't think women can flourish. We will not have the West Yorkshire we deserve if women and girls feel after dark that they can't go out at night. So I was pleased we had a Reclaim the Night moment in Greenhead Park in Kirklees, where 200 people came together to say we want to feel safer in our streets. But that's why we've developed an app, a safer travel app that you can get on your M card, which you can tell us where you feel unsafe on the buses. It's why we've invested in training for 15 PCSOs to go on the buses and in the bus stations, and we've allocated money to continue that presence. It's £1 million a year. But it's also why we are making the safety of women and girls important and setting up the first ever women's safety unit in the country to tackle this nonsense, because it can't be right that we take it as acceptable that 2 women a week are killed by their partners or their exes. We have to do something about it. And as I say, female leadership makes a difference, because I have my lived experience and I don't want other people to go through what I went through and what so many people in this room will have gone through. But I'm going to come to Alison Lowe, who is also, luckily, a Bradford champion of the nighttime economy, and maybe could say a little bit more about Bradford particularly.
Yeah,
Thank you, Alison.
Thank you. So I've got the privilege of being the patron of Bradford at Night. I love Bradford, worked here for many years, so I know it very well. And using funding from the Mayor through this thing called the Safer Streets Fund, we've invested hundreds of thousands of pounds across the whole of West Yorkshire in Ask for Angela, in taxi marshals, night marshals, safe spaces, which hopefully people in this room will have seen and benefited from. We also funded Bradford at Night to bring in the Walk Safe app, the first in the country. It was Bradford. It's now the whole of West Yorkshire. I think Colindale have just signed up, so fingers crossed that they've signed up now. And Bradford started that, and it's a whole movement so that women feel safe to come into the centre of Bradford, travel around Bradford at night. We've also trained up the Safer Travel team, which Tracy mentioned, the 15 PCSOs and a sergeant, but it's wider than just the policing colleagues. Every single bus station has got trained staff now, so if anyone has got any difficulties, any issues, you're worried, you can go to the bus station, the staff are all trained. If it's not a staffed bus station, there's a helpline in every bus station now. So there's a whole system for people to access that support if they need it. We've also got this thing called L Savvy, licensing savvy, so we, as well as Ask for Angela, we're offering training, additional training to licensed premises so that they can address things like spiking, for example, and it's an improved offer so that when you go out to nighttime economy venues, you know that they've been through those checks and balances and that they are a safe venue to attend. But as well as that, Tracy's also invested in parks across the whole of West Yorkshire. She's funded some research with Leeds University, and off the back of that research we now know that we've got some safer parks that Tracy's funded. We've come up with some guidance for all our local authorities here in West Yorkshire that's now gone to every local authority in the country, and beyond, it's an international piece of work that we've done and that's benefiting women and girls in green spaces across the world.
Thank you, Alison.
Thank you, Alison. And even though Rachel's not here, thank you, Rachel, for the question. So we're going to move on to violence, which obviously adds to what Alison was saying. We saw a lot of that earlier this year with EDL riots. Fortunately, Bradford wasn't affected, but I believe Huma has a very important question related to this. So I know what Huma looks like because I know Huma. So Huma, I can see you. Tracy. Can you ask your question?
Hi, Huma Nizami, the CEO of the Race Equality Network. So following the far-right riots that we witnessed in August, I know that the government's announced £15 million around community cohesion, 600,000 has gone to Leeds. Luckily, the far-right riots weren't experienced in Bradford because as a district we were one of the integration areas and we've done a lot of work around that. So what is the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, what actions are you taking to improve the community cohesion in the districts, and is there any funding for that? Because that's needed now more than ever.
Yeah, thank you for that. And it was something I was really proud of, actually, that whilst Hare Hills obviously was very troubling and worrying, that came out of a situation about child protection. I don't think we weren't subject to the same riots that you saw across the rest of the country. And that is down to Bradfordians and people in the community that have worked incredibly hard, councillors, bringing people together. And when I was an MP, I went out with the fire service in Bradford on bonfire night, and to meet people who work all year to make really strong relationships with young people, with people who are known for antisocial behaviour, so that during that period, bonfire night, that they are talked down from damaging their community. So I was really proud that West Yorkshire wasn't on that list. But there's, as I say, there's a lot that we're doing with around social cohesion through Fatima and the work that she's done. But I know the race action plan is quite important, so maybe Alison, you could speak to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So community cohesion is not something that the Mayor is funded to do directly, but of course she is one of the 6 leaders in the Combined Authority, which includes the 5 leaders of the local authorities. And Susan and I have discussed this at length. The local authority is best placed to do that community cohesion work, and obviously any funding that Tracy can find, like the Safer Streets money, for example, but also the Mayor's Safer Communities Fund, which is currently live, currently out. Please put in your bids up to £20,000. It closes on the 13th of December, so you've got 8 days. And you can put in joint bids of up to £80,000, so 4 organisations can bid for up to £80,000. And you can bid for community cohesion work, you can bid for things that will reduce hate crime, for example. So please do put those bids in. So where Tracy has got that flexibility, she will definitely put that that money to best use, but it will definitely be the work of local authorities in their communities that will bring the big boost that we need. The Police Race Action Plan is another area of work that Tracy and I scrutinise. So West Yorkshire Police, alongside the National Police Chiefs Council nationally, have got a plan about improving relationships with black communities, and I say black who's politically not white, and we hold them to account for that work, and community engagement is one of the strands, use of force, stop and search, one of the strands that we hold them to account for, and I believe that if we work better with policing, get them to police with consent, understanding the needs of all our communities and more representative of the communities that we serve, then we won't see what happened in the rest of the country, which did not happen here in West Yorkshire, and by the way did not happen in 2011 either. That's what we need to be focusing on as politicians, that relationship with policing, holding them to account for the way that they police and serve us as a police service, not a police force.
But can I just add to that? I know that you're saying that it's the job of the local authority, but Bradford Council, as a result of the budget cuts, got rid of their community cohesion team, strong communities team. So a lot of that responsibilities on now our shoulders as a voluntary and community sector. So then how do we do that without any resource?
So what I'm saying is that the Mayor Safe Communities Fund is one way. So obviously the money that comes into Tracy's office, it's stipulated by government the areas that she can spend that money in. So yes, you can spend it on housing, yes, you can spend it on transport, yes, you can spend it on policing. So we find creative ways to fund the third sector, the voluntary community faith sector, because you're so integral to what we do. But we would never do anything without talking to our local authority partners, because they do that community development work, that asset-based community development work. They understand the communities in a way that we at West Yorkshire Combined Authority can, but we have people like Fatima helping with those conversations to navigate and make sure that we're getting the money that we can get to support you. But it's an imperfect world. I wish community cohesion was one of the Mayor's responsibilities, and that she brought a load of money with that, because she would give it to the local authorities so that they could do that work directly. But they still do community cohesion work even without those teams being in place, because community development, community cohesion is in everything that they're doing.
Also, just to add that the work that is going on at Bradford City of Culture, bringing communities together on a cultural project, on, you know, whether that's even tree planting, or whether that's art for poor mental health, you bring communities together for a different, maybe a different outcome. But I think that's what Bradford does brilliantly. But honestly, who would be a councillor at the moment? I mean, the in-year cut of £40 million, particularly Labour councillors, don't come into this role in order to oversee cuts. So I am hopeful that this new government does understand I can't achieve anything if I don't have strong local authorities, and that multi-year funding that has been promised from Rachel going forward from the spring, I think hopefully will help us. But for those that don't know, the Mayor's Community Safety Fund is money from the proceeds of crime, and then it's given back to the community. And this time round, there's £1 million. So if you have an organisation, a community group that is in your patch that you think does deserve and need funding, the money is there. And to bring community groups together to get a bigger pot, you can have more impact as well. So please do think about applying.
Thank you for your question. Thank you, Alison. Thank you, Tracy. And I think that's a wrap on all those questions that came in. So thank you, everybody, for your questions.